Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The organisers asked me to say a little bit about expression of identity, about my corporate philosophy and approach. This is my corporate identity, Theatre Projects Consultants. We are a consulting company. We design theatre buildings all over the world. The company has worked in 75 countries. Now, I know for a big conglomerate in Korea, 75 countries doesn't sound like very many, but we're only 40 people, so we are spread very thinly all over the world. We design theatre buildings, and one of the things we feel is very, very important is that the identity of that building must be appropriate to the community in which we build it. I don't come to a city or a country and say, let's do it like this because we built it like this in Milwaukee or Manchester. We want to understand what is important about a country. From a personal point of view, that's the corporate side. From a personal point of view, I'm passionate about theatre. I go to theatre, concerts, opera. I love performances. It's what I live for. And what I want to do in my life is to spend my life building wonderful performing arts buildings that look backwards, that learn from the past. I'm going to show you some pictures of older theatres today, but also look to the future. We can't just preserve the past. I landed in Seoul about 20 hours ago, so I've been here for 20 hours. This is the 59th country I have visited and worked in around the world. I'm interested in arts and culture and society and people. The opportunity to work in so many different cultures is fabulous. I actually have the best job in the world. Thank you. Anybody involved in the performing arts is passionate about what they do. We are passionate about what we do. I mused on the title for this presentation. Initially, I was going to call it Theatres, Their Role in the City. And I thought about that, and I didn't like it very much. And then I moved on to opera houses, concert halls, and theatres, their evolution. And that sounded a little bit historical and a little boring, actually, as well. So finally, I gave up on anything else, and this talk this afternoon is just called Theatres. We're going to wander around the world over 500 years and look at a bunch of different theatres. I'm going to start by talking about some opera houses, old, new, and innovative. The first one goes back 285 years. Secondly, I'm going to look at some contemporary concert halls and the new technologies being used in those halls. I'm often asked as a theatre consultant, can we build one theatre which is suitable for everything? For concerts, for opera, for drama, for conferences. And the honest answer is no, you can't. You can create flexible theatres, but you can't do everything. I'll talk about what we call a multi-form theatre. Theatres have played a major role in urban renewal. I'm going to comment on that. And I'll conclude with 4 theatres in Asia. 1526. Sweden is a wonderfully innovative country, like Korea. It's got IKEA, it's got Volvo, it's got Ericsson, etc. It has always been a leader in the performing arts. King Gustav Vasa, founded one of the world's first orchestras in 1526. That's 480 years ago. The orchestra had 12 musicians. King Gustav Vasa was succeeded by Gustav III, who was known as Good King Gustav because he was a great supporter and patron of the arts. He founded the first opera company in Sweden. He founded the first ballet company. He built their opera house. He was called Gustav III for short. His full title is on the right of the screen, and you'll notice down here it says etc., etc. That's still the short version. This was the Gustavian Opera House that he built. It opened in 1782. He loved going there. He loved opera and masquerades. Masquerades are masked balls where you wear a mask and you chase attractive young ladies and things like that. And for the first 10 years of its life, this opera house was very, very successful. Unfortunately, in the 10th year, King Gustav was attending a performance there, and he was assassinated in the lobby of the theatre. So shortly afterwards, the theatre was demolished. But at that time, 250 years ago, opera houses had a major role in the city. This is the Garnier Opera in Paris, an enormously spectacular building. It's like a palace. It's at the head of one of the grand avenues designed by Baron Haussmann. La Scala in Milan, also major situation in the middle of a city on the city square. The National Theatre in Munich, again on a major city square. The Bolshoi in Moscow. People took pride in their arts buildings at that time. The Royal Opera House in London. We have a slightly different attitude to the culture, the arts and culture in London. The Royal Opera House is not on a major boulevard. It's not on a major square. It's on a back street in Covent Garden. We're slightly more ambivalent about culture. But it wasn't just in Europe. I want to go to Brazil, to a town that I think majority of you have never heard of, the city of Manaus. Manaus is right in the middle of Brazil. It's just there. It is 2,000 kilometers from anywhere. It's in the middle of the Brazilian rainforest, where the river Amazon and Negro River meet. The Amazon River on the left is a brown river. The Rio Negro is, as its name implies, a black river. The water doesn't mix for 10 kilometers. Manaus in 1865 had a population of about 40,000 people. It was a village in the middle of the jungle. But then they discovered rubber, and the Amazon had an incredible rubber boom for about 50 years, 60 years. Manaus became one of the wealthiest cities on earth. It was up there with New York and Paris in terms of prosperity and wealth. In this tiny little town, in the middle of the Brazilian rainforest. It's bizarre. And the leaders decided they would create a major city there. At its heart is Teatro Amazonas. This is the legendary Lost Opera House. It opened. It is phenomenal. It's beautiful. It's on the top of the hill, on the highest point. It's built up on a podium. This is the lobby of the building. Everything in this building was imported. The marble came from Italy. The lighting came from Paris. The steelwork came from Glasgow. It's in the middle of the Brazilian rainforest. You are surrounded by 1 billion trees. All of the wood was imported from Latvia. This is a true folly. This is the building today. In 1920, the rubber boom bust. The town went broke. The theatre was closed for 70 years. It became the Lost Opera House. The government has now reopened it, and it's a very active performing arts centre in their city. Coming up to date, this is the new opera house in Oslo in Norway, designed by Snøhetta. Built on a fjord, you can actually come out of the opera house, walk down to the water's edge. You can take your shoes and socks off and go walking in the water there. It's a modern opera house. The roof you can walk on. 1,400 seats. This was the opening night, the Flying Dutchman. I want to go to the Middle East, to Muscat in Oman. Oman is a small country. This is the Gulf, the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf, Qatar. And Muscat, capital city, about 600,000 population. Sultan Qaboos, the ruler of Oman, is passionate about classical music. He has his own symphony orchestra who exists to pay for Sultan Qaboos and his friends. It's like a sort of Central European country. They wanted a theatre, and a theatre that could be configured as a concert hall or as a theatre. So on the left, you see the room as a concert hall. The blue is the platform. And on the right, you see it reconfigured as a theatre. The concert shell has moved away into storage, and here is the orchestra pit. On the left, the concert hall. On the right, as a theatre. And a little animation which steps through. Here it is as a theatre. The concert shell starts to slide back into storage, and you have a theatre for an opera production. So answering the question, can you combine activities? Some you can. Last November, the London Philharmonic Orchestra played with the world-famous cellist Yo-Yo Ma on stage there. Here is the room configured. So there you see it as a concert hall. Sultan Qaboos is passionate about organ music. He is the ruler of the country. He plays the pipe organ. So he insisted there should be a pipe organ in this room. The organ goes away, and here is the room as an opera house. And this little sequence shows the concert shell. The concert shell weighs about 600 tons, moving into storage at the rear of the stage. This is the exterior of the building. This is the royal entrance, the lobbies, and the exterior at night. I want to move on to some concert halls. The classic concert hall is a shoebox shape. This is the Musikvereinsaal in Vienna. It's probably the most famous concert hall in the world, home to the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. It's a shoebox shape. It is a rectangular room and with a high flat ceiling, giving excellent acoustics for symphony concerts. It's the classic shape for a concert hall. The Concertgebouw in Amsterdam is virtually identical in shape, parallel side walls, high flat ceiling. And this has been the form of many concert halls in the past and in the present. Kilden is the art centre in Kristiansand in Norway, which opened on the 6th of January this year. This is the building at night, and inside there is a 1,200-seat concert hall. If you strip away the decoration, it's virtually identical in form and proportion to the older halls in Vienna and Amsterdam. And there's a good reason for it. Acoustically, it works. Brilliant rooms for acoustic. So many people pursue this idea, this philosophy. Some architects and consultants do not. This is the Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles, Frank Gehry building. On the left is a photograph of the model, and on the right is the real building. We worked with Gehry on this project, and on one occasion, this photograph arrived in my office in London, and somebody pinned it up in the kitchen with a yellow post-it note on it saying, "Who sat on the model?" Because it does look as though it's been squashed. The building is extraordinary, as many of Gehry's buildings are. Inside, and here is another completely different interpretation of a pipe organ. You saw the organ in Oman. This is the one in Los Angeles. Nobody knows where Frank Gehry got his inspiration from for this organ. I have my suspicions. Another Frank Gehry building, which we do a lot of work with Gehry, is the New World Symphony in Miami. The New World Symphony is quite a small concert hall of about 780 seats. It's the home for the New World Orchestra, Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Michael Tilson Thomas. And Michael Tilson Thomas is passionate about innovation in music making. So this room, all of the acoustic surfaces in the room are projection screens. So the orchestra down here is surrounded by 19 high-definition projection surfaces. So you can have a projection surrounding the orchestra. The room is also wired to Internet 2, the high-speed Internet backbone, to allow collaborative working. So you can have part of the orchestra in Miami, The string section could be in Miami. The percussion section could be in Seoul, and another section could be in Australia, and they can collaborate together using new media. Outside the building, externally, there is a 7,000 square meter, 7,700 square meter projection wall, and up to 2,000 people can sit in the park outside and watch free what is happening inside the building. Multiform and flexible theatres. I want to show one example of a flexible theatre. This is the Cerritos Center for Performing Arts in Los Angeles County. Cerritos is a community of only about 56,000 people, but there are 11 million people within a 1-hour drive time. In this picture, everything you see moves. The ceiling moves, the walls move, the floor moves. The only thing that doesn't move is this balcony rail and this row of seats. Here's the balcony rail again, but in this picture, it's a 900-seat proscenium arch theatre, red curtain. Here, it has become a 1,800-seat concert hall with the audience surrounding the stage. You can take all the seats away, you can put a cabaret, tables and chairs into the space. Here a room is set up for opening night. This was Frank Sinatra. Sinatra opened it, playing to an audience of about 2,000 people. And this is the opening night audience. Sinatra performed here, his orchestra there. This is the architect, and this is me when I had a little bit more hair a few years ago. Theatres in urban renewal. I should start by saying that Jackie's library is just about there. Yeah, I had to say that. The Lincoln Center in New York came about in the early 1960s. There was a desire to create a new opera house, new concert hall, library, etc. And one of the challenges was to find a piece of land which was cheap enough. New York City even then was expensive. So what was chosen was an area on the Upper West Side around Columbus Circle, it wasn't derelict, but it was low-rent industrial buildings. The land was cheap, and they could afford to build the Lincoln Center, which is now, I think, the biggest performing arts institution in the world there. There was a very important study done in 1983 on the economic impact of the arts in New York City, and it looked particularly at the area around Lincoln Center, which had been completely regenerated and lifted. The Lincoln Center buildings cost about $160, $180 million when they were built. The city of New York benefits in increased taxes to the tune of more than $180 million every year. The arts are a really good investment, great payback. Not performing arts, but the arts in general. Bilbao in northern Spain is a post-industrial declining city. It was on the way down. They decided to reverse that trend by investment in arts and architecture. This is the Guggenheim Museum, another Frank Gehry building, which has become a major tourist attraction from people from all over Europe. But they also built a new airport designed by Santiago Calatrava, a new underground system. The underground stations were designed by Norman Foster, footbridge also by Calatrava, an example of a city in decline whose fortunes are reversed by investment in arts and culture. I'm going to skip over Dallas because we're going to run out of time and go to the Sage in Gateshead. This is the north of England. This is the city of Newcastle upon Tyne. Some of you may have heard of it. It's the regional capital. I was born very near here. It was the regional capital. But it was the regional capital, and they were very complacent about their position as a city. They did not invest in the city. On the opposite bank of the river, this is the River Tyne, this is a different city. This is the city of Gateshead. This was a blue-collar, industrial, working-class city. They did invest in arts and culture, and they have taken the leadership, culturally, from Newcastle upon Tyne. The first thing they built was not cultural, it was the biggest regional shopping mall in Europe at the time when it opened. They then built Anthony Gormley's Angel of the North. This is a huge sculpture. The wingspan of this sculpture is the same as a 767. It is immense. They built a new footbridge crossing the Tyne. They converted the flour mills into an art gallery, and Norman Foster was the architect for the Sage, their performing arts centre. Top left, it has a 1,600-seat concert hall. Top right, a 400-seat recital hall, and is phenomenally successful. But I always like this quote by Frank Rich about cultural regeneration, urban renewal. Culture in itself and in a vacuum does not mandate downtown rebirth. I'm going to finish very quickly with 4 projects in this region. The first is the Esplanade, Singapore's Performing Arts Centre. A building in this area has to take account not just of the Western performing arts, but also the Asian performing arts. At the top of the picture, you see a wayang for Chinese opera. The bottom, a kecak dance, Indonesian kecak dance, the Indian performing arts. This is the Esplanade. Inside the building, there are 2 major theatres. This is the public entrance, a 2,000-seat opera house, a 1,600-seat concert hall, and the spaces under the white roof are commercial spaces. This is the building at night, the opera house, concert hall, and most importantly in Singapore, the commercial areas. If you go to Singapore, the whole of Singapore is a retail experience. The airport is a shopping centre with 2 runways attached. Your hotel is a shopping centre with some bedrooms attached. Their performing arts centre is a shopping centre with a couple of auditoriums attached. I'm not sure about Korea yet. West Kowloon, in West Kowloon, the government has set aside 55 hectares for their new arts district on the waterfront. At one end, there will be an 18,000-seat arena, opera house, concert hall, 16 theatres and a museum in total. And this project has just become an architectural competition. Across the water in Macau, this is a completely different commercial project. It's in a casino. City of Dreams is one of Macau's big casinos. They have to offer entertainment. House of Dancing Waters is effectively theatre in the round. Audience sits at 270 degrees round a stage which can be water or it can be solid. It is the largest commercial pool of water in the world. It can all lower and it can be a deep pool. You can have fountains. You can have yachts and ships emerging from it. This is not high culture. This is popular entertainment. And it's very, very successful and makes a lot of money. Finally, coming to Seoul, the Yongsan Landmark Tower. The newspaper this morning reports that work has commenced in clearing the site. This is probably a very political project, so I won't say very much about it. We've worked with Renzo Piano on this building, and this is the tower, 111 floors, and at the base, somewhere down there, is going to become a 1,100-seat theatre surrounded by retail restaurants. The goal is to create a 24-hour space, but I'm not sure in Seoul you need a lot more 24-hour spaces. That's the building in section. So we've wandered around the world. We've covered 500 years from the first orchestra to today, and I'd like to thank you for your patience, and if there are any questions, happy to take them. Thank you.